Okay, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of All Too Real 2. My name is Michael E. Cullen II, and with me, as always, via Zoom is
Sesame. Khonshu is actually kind of a dickhead god in Karda.
It's a long middle name.
Yeah.
Is that Egyptian?
Or Markada, if you will, because of Mark Spector. So I'm actually Sesame. Khonshu is kind of a dickhead god. Markada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so today on the show, we are covering episode 2 of season 1 of Moon Knight, the Disney Plus television series.
And I hope it's only season 1, because I want another season.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
We'll have to see, because apparently they don't do a lot of... Well, I know they're going to do a season 2 of What If. I know that much. But that's the only one I know of that they are going to do that.
Loki as well.
Oh, Loki. That's right. Yeah, Loki.
Yeah. But anywho, I do know that Oscar Isaac is only signed up for. He's only on contract to do this show, not even any movies or anything. So,
okay.
He didn't sign a long-term contract. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, Moon Knight's kind of a obscure character in the Marvel. He's not. He's almost kind of seen as a joke sometimes because, like, the stories. I've been doing like a deep dive of like the history of Moon Knight. Some of these stories are just they're like absolutely ridiculous. Like, like, what were they thinking? Like when they thought of this? Like literally, its very first appearance isn't even in his own comic book, which that's not. I mean, a lot of characters.
Yeah, most comic book characters are introduced in somebody else's.
But it was an issue called Werewolf by Night, where he's Mark Spector. He's a mercenary, and they hire this group. I don't know, government people, whatever. they hire him to capture this werewolf, and they give him the suit. So the Moon Knight suit in this original version, he wasn't given by Khonshu, or doesn't have any like supernatural divine type of thing. They just gave him the suit, wear the suit, and it's got a bunch of gadgets and shit, and go capture this werewolf. And then he captures a werewolf, but then he's like, well, hey, you paid me to bring him, to capture him. You didn't pay me to bring him in. And then I guess like he felt sorry for the werewolf, so they like went and beat up the guys that paid him to do all this in the first place. And then he just leaves. That's it. That's your very. What's that?
I said okay.
That's your very first appearance of Moon Knight. Just like a pointless, meandering story, which kind of, I guess, makes sense a little bit because it kind of because his character, I guess, sort of evolves over time as being kind of like he's neither here nor there. He just kind of shows up, then he leaves. And that kind of goes into the dissociative identity disorder, which that was later retcon. Later that's what wasn't his own. That originally his separate identities were just covers that he was using to like talk to certain people. Like he had Stephen Grant was like his high society, rich kind of Bruce Wayne type of guy, so he could like hear about like crimes, the big crimes being committed. But then he also had a character that was more of like a street level guy, but like these weren't like actual personalities. These were just identities that he created for himself. And then over time, of course, that evolved into. It's really interesting. I'm very. I don't know why, but I'm very much more interested in this character than I have in any of the other characters, even though he's like very kind of like a minor character.
Well, it's probably because you know less about him than other ones, so it's easier to find more. And the thing is, I mean, it's cool. I mean, it could be developed into a really cool character, which it already has. And I think I would love to see him join the greater MCU, but I guess there's no real major plans at the moment, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see.
So the name of this episode is Summon the Suit. It was directed by Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson. Written by Michael Castelline. Castelline? I don't know how you pronounce his name, but anyways, I'm sorry, Michael. Pretty sure I know how to pronounce Michael, but other than that, So, the original release date was April 6th, 2022. So, initial thoughts here. What did you think about this episode?
I loved it. I think it it picked up right where it left off, but things got really intense really fast. I was kind of afraid of the slow burn thing that these shows tend to do, where the first 3 episodes almost feel kind of like filler episodes. Then they gotta wrap everything up in 3 episodes. I'm like, well, that seems kind of like episode 1 was like the filler episode, like just getting things started, and then episode 2, I mean, we're already talking about like the history of the gods and their agendas and avatars, and the scarab is put back into the the mix and all this kind of stuff. I really liked it a lot.
Me too. I mean, I thought it was a really well made episode. The everything, directing, action, story, everything, it was good. I'm really digging Ethan Hawke's portrayal of Harrow. It's getting even more culty, creepy-ish, which is cool. But he's very subdued, kind of like a really good cult leader.
He's not. He's charismatic, but he knows how to not to go too hard into it.
Kind of reminds me in a weird way of the Nexium guy.
What was his name?
Oh my god. Yeah, dickhead. But anyways,
he's nobody. But
yeah.
See, that's the thing. Is like a lot of cults fail because their cult leader gets too wild with their charisma, and they eventually turn a lot of people away, and then all that are left are the fanatics. And you might think, well, that's a good thing, but it's like, well, no, it's not, because the fanatics are usually very unstable, and some of them might want to have power for themselves. Then you got to worry about people taking you out. So then you get paranoid. So then you start hiring more bodyguards. But then you start wondering, well, is my bodyguard going to try to kill me? And then basically that ends into the whole like murder suicide thing. So like, this guy Arthur, he's very, very controlled. He is charismatic, but he almost I think he believes in his own con. I really do.
Well, yeah.
At least at this point.
I don't think he's a con artist per se, as much as he might be being conned himself.
Right.
And I mean, somebody brought up something interesting to talk about it, like the way that he does his like almost like lie detector type of thing. It's very similar to like Scientology with their auditing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Where they just hook up this fake thing, and they get you to excuse me, you get to confess their supposed things or whatever, and then they write it all down as a way to threaten them later on. Like, oh, if you want to quit, well, he says here on October 2nd that you had an affair, blah 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 or whatever. And we wouldn't want your wife to know that, would we?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. So let's jump in. What happened in this episode?
It's more like what didn't happen in this episode. So Steven, he wakes up to the sounds of the screeches and fist punching the shit out of that jackal from the night before. And then he wakes up and he immediately jumps out of bed because he thinks he's still, at the museum. Ends up falling face first on the floor because he's got that strap, attached to his foot. And then he immediately starts asking, to talk to Mark because he remembers everything from the last night. And, Mark doesn't show up. And then he goes to work all paranoid because the surveillance dude, told him that like the bathrooms have been completely destroyed. So Steven's like, "Oh, I've got some information about that. Let me go and watch the security footage with you." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like, "Yeah, but don't tell Donna." And then Steven's like, "Oh man, like this is gonna melt your mind. This is like some Area 51 MI6 stuff." And all you see is him, though. You don't see the jackal. You just see Steven, hiding behind a, whatever, crying. He's like, "Are you crying?" He's like, "Yeah, a bit." And then, yeah, just, no dog or no Egyptian jackal, nothing, just him running away from an imaginary nothing. And so then he starts freaking out, like, well, shit, did I imagine this or something? And then
you got these scenes where it looks like he's fighting himself, sort of like in in like Fight Club or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like that whole, like we talked about before, where this is almost like a reverse Fight Club, where the Brad Pitt character is like the real guy, and the Stephen Grant is the alternate. Basically like he's like the big tough guy who wants like a softer side of himself as opposed to
that is as far as we know so far.
Well, yeah, as far as we know, but that's
who knows where they're going to take this? Because I think there might even be like more personalities that we have yet to meet. So
there are quite a few in the comic, well, at least in some of the more recent comic series. So he gets fired. The guy from HR's, he's pretty nice. He's like, "Hey, we got these doctors that you could see. They're really good. You're not alone," even though that's like a classic HR thing to say. And maybe these people can help you. And then sends him off on his way and talks to his statue buddy and gives him a hug. And the guy actually moves this time. And the last time he didn't.
Yeah, he gives him a little side eye or something there.
So that's interesting. And then we go into the next stuff. So what happens after that?
So basically he learns that Mark Spector is the name of his other avatar. He learns of the avatar Egyptian moon god Khonshu. So then he is confronted at one point by Layla, who I guess was unaware of the fact that Steven existed. So, or maybe she did know and left him because of that. Who knows? They were she presents divorce papers after he insists they go back to his place. And so they say that they're not going to, press charges at all or anything at the museum. They're just firing him for destroying the restroom.
Which is like, come on, like, how badly that restroom was destroyed. I mean, how could they think that he,
I'm pretty sure, like, if you're working at Walmart and you destroy their restroom, they're going to do more than fire you.
Well, I know, but what I mean, though, is how badly it was destroyed. How could they think that he
did it
alone did that? I mean, like,
but still,
weapon,
they have no other proof to anything else happening. So,
no, I guess not. So yeah, I love that scene though in the storage facility though, where Khonshu's basically like chasing him.
Yeah.
And like at first, I thought there was something wrong with my TV because there's like this freeze frame when Steven screams when Khonshu. But then I watched it again. The same thing happened. Then I watched like some clips on YouTube, and it's the same. I was like, oh, that's actually part of the like they did that on purpose. Like
it reminded me of. There's a scene in The Man from Snowy River This is a really weird thing, but where they do a similar thing with a horse. They have this like horse that's scared, and they do a freeze frame with the horse to create more tension. And when I saw that, it just reminded me of that. So,
yeah, I think I remember you mentioned that once.
Yeah,
Movie some other time, but yeah. So I thought that was really cool, and that could have been symbolic in a way too of like where like he froze like in between identities, like he couldn't even like switch to Mark even if he wanted to at that moment because I mean you gotta imagine this 8 feet tall god who's like not even really chasing you because he just like can appear at will in any place he wants to, and like you'll see him, down the hall, but then all of a sudden he's right in front of you, and he's got his back turned to you, and then he faces you.
Yeah, and it's cool the way the noise of the lights turning on and off is really cool. In that scene, back to Layla, we've got when they're in the apartment, she finds a book of Stephen's, not of Mark's, of French poetry. And her favorite poem is the same as his. So it's kind of weird that, this whole, even though he's a different personality, has this favorite poem that's the same as his wife's.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was thinking about that, that maybe part of this identity was like maybe what he thought would be like more suitable, to be with Layla, kind of thing. Like,
yeah, it's more of a homebody sort of more reliable type of person than a wild adventurer.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The poem is about like separation though too, being separated from your love. So it's interesting there too.
Yeah.
So, anyways, while they're at the apartment, cops do come, and they're named Fitzgerald and Kennedy, by the way. So that should have been a a key right there to let them know that they're fake.
Well, just even the way they were acting, like, as soon as they came there, was just really suspicious. Like immediately they just felt like, okay, these aren't real cops, or maybe they are. Maybe they're
but
part of the whole cult.
But either way, they're part of they're part of Ahmet's cult, and they take Layla and Stephen to see Harrow. Arthur.
Well, Layla ran away. It was just
yeah.
Steven.
So eventually, it was just Stephen. Yeah. Oh yeah, she ran away out there. I'm sorry, I forgot they were trying to get her, but she wasn't there. She was hiding.
She left.
I totally forgot about that for some reason.
That's all right.
Because then she ends up back there later. Because she does end up helping him later, so that's why I forgot. But yeah, so take some. What happens there once he's with Arthur?
Once again, Arthur is very he's very nice, kind to Stephen. He understands his predicament, but he's still very firm that he wants the scarab. But he's he understands that when he's talking to Stephen, he's talking to Stephen. He's not talking to Mark pretending to be someone else. Like, he understands that this is like an actual other person that he's talking to. So that's interesting. And then he shows the little commune, I guess, that they live in, how it used to be like the worst neighborhood in London. Like, the crime rate there was just like sky high, and now everybody's growing like their own tomatoes, and they got like a goat for some reason. And
well, every neighborhood needs a goat.
Yeah, of course. And like, even Steven like points out that a goat, and Arthur's just like smiles, like, yeah, like almost like he's just like being very very almost like treating Steven kind of like a child, almost like yeah, that is a goat, it's funny, whatever. And then they says that he speaks to this one girl in Mandarin, and then she speaks back, and he Steven's like, "Oh, you speak Chinese?" And he's like, "Oh, it's Mandarin." Actually, like, kind of corrects them, because there's multiple languages that people speak in China. And he says they all aspire to learn 3 languages, or at least 3 languages. Basically demonstrating that this is like a very prosperous, intellectually inclined neighborhood. Like people who they live they live good, productive lives. They're curious, about other cultures. Almost like a utopia, I guess you would call it. And you go inside. I guess they're I don't know where they all stay, in some building, and they got these people watching like dolphins, or the whales.
Bunch of like nature type stuff, like a bunch of animals and things like that in slow motion on screen.
Yeah, exactly. Slow motion, just like a peaceful, kind of meditative, probably something like that. And who knows, that could have been maybe new recruits maybe do that to kind of get them used to like the peaceful life or whatever. And then he reveals that he's a vegan himself. And but by the way, Khonshu is like throwing a complete fit during this time. Like he's like making things all windy and shit. And he's like, Arthur's like, you could see him, right? And he's like, don't worry, you don't have to listen to him all the time. Or you don't have to do what he says. Like he's like almost like like trying to assure Steven that like he's like, yeah, this guy's haunting you and stuff, but he can't really do anything to you. And it's like, that's all he can do here.
He's like, just acting like a kid in the middle of the grocery store who didn't get the Nestle Crunch bar he asked for or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because and the thing is too is like he's really getting under Khonshu's skin. Like I think he knows that he's there. Like I don't know if he knows, but like he knows like the things to say to really piss. Because it like he said at one point, he says Khonshu likes to throw temper tantrums like a 2-year-old. None of the gods respect him, and you see Khonshu like really far away, and he's like trying to argue against that. Like it almost like feels like he's getting under his skin, like like,
yeah.
He's like, oh well, I only punish those who deserve it, and like I am true justice. And he's like, well, let me guess, right now he's saying I am true justice or whatever. Like just really like just being very patronizing towards this fellow other god that he doesn't really agree with or believe in.
Yeah, we find out as they talk, though, too, that Arthur reveals that he was Khonshu's previous avatar.
Right.
Until
he could be lying.
Yeah, he could be lying, but he says until he decided to follow Ammit because she prevents harm rather than what Khonshu does, where he seeks justice for past deeds, where Ammit basically seeks justice for future deeds.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he talks about pulling evil out from the root, amputation of a diseased limb, stuff like that. Things that might look grotesque or might might seem bad on the surface, but in actuality are good. It's basically like an extreme form of predestination or predeterminism, which is a form of philosophy which basically says that everyone's actions are predetermined. Like anything anyone's ever done, it was meant to happen. So it's okay, I guess, to punish them before it happens because they were going to do it anyway. Which that's I don't know. I kind of agree with determinism a little bit, but not to that extent.
But yeah, it's kind of creepy. Speaking of determinism, I'm determining right now that we should take a break, and then we'll come right back and talk more about the episode. How about that?
Right. Yeah. See, you only thought you had free will to do that, but you were determined to.
Yeah. The gods told me we needed to, so let's do that right now, and we'll be right back.
No Outlet Live.
Hey, I'm Jay Remy, host of No Outlet Live. If you're in a podcast that explore any and everything, check us out. We stream anywhere you listen or watch podcasts, or just type No Outlet Live, one word, in your Google search bar to find the show. Live Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Facebook. No Outlet Live, your road to boredom ends here. Do you like Tessa? Do you think this will be a date that can last?
Well, she's not very articulate.
And just as was predicted, we are back.
Yep.
It was determined.
It was determined, yeah.
And now all is right in the world.
Well,
as I open my Pepsi.
Yeah, see, that was determined as well.
Okay, yep. So what happens next?
So Arthur's basically trying to, indoctrinate Stephen into, Amit's philosophy of predestination or an extreme form of predeterminism. And Stephen's, he's listening politely and stuff, but he's really not having it. And he starts, arguing with them like, well, if Amit judges people pre-evil, then isn't that like killing an innocent person? Or like, what if it's a child? What if, they're going to do something in 30 years, but you're just going to kill a child? And Arthur's like, yeah, I'm actually glad that you said that or whatever. And, what about amputating a limb or, stuff like that? And, Stephen's like, well, a child is not, a diseased limb, and he's like, are you guys all into this? Like child murder? Like, I don't know. To me, it's kind of like where I draw the line, on the whole child murder thing. Like Arthur's kind of like picking up on the sarcasm a little bit. He's like, I don't like this, So he's like, he shows the cane that he uses, and he says, this is this cane was given to Amit's first avatar. It contains just a tiny sliver of her power. You can see this purple stuff, which is again interesting because purple in MCU usually is about power.
Yeah.
So this wasn't really purple. It was kind of like a violet almost to me. It seemed like
yeah, but it's still closer to purple than any of the other colors, and it's kind of
the Power Stone was purple. Mm-hmm. Black Panther, which is interesting. In Black Panther, one of the gods that gave them power was one of the Egyptian gods too. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then that stuff's purple, and that's what gives Black Panther, super strength. So it's interesting. And so he kind of threatened Stephen, which now he's showing a different side to himself. Maybe he's not so kind, and he's just treating Stephen nicely to kind of get him to open up a little bit, to see if he can bring Mark out, talk to Mark or whatever. And he actually starts talking to Mark, even though it's still Stephen, like saying that, Khonshu is a liar, that there's always one last mission,
and he's revealing why he wants the scarab.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
which is to basically he wants the scarab to find Amit's tomb and resurrect her so she can purge all of humanity of evil.
Well, he said the cruel masses, which is interesting.
Yeah,
which means like what? Like only 1% of humanity is like good,
Yeah.
Like,
so basically, I mean, getting rid of all of humanity, but all of the evil in humanity is what I'm saying. So,
Well, no, but I'm saying he refers to them as the cruel masses, which that implies that most people are bad instead of like, a few people or whatever. Like he thinks it kind of reminds me a little bit of Ra's al Ghul, like, where his whole sense of justice was no matter the severity of the crime, the punishment should be the same, which is absolutely bonkers. But like, it's like a guy steals an apple, you got to cut his hand off. But like, that's the same punishment as like, let's say if a guy like manipulates the stock market to earn trillions of dollars and completely tanks an economy and causes like poverty for the entire nation. Same thing,
or somebody steps on a fly is the same as somebody murdering a small family. It's like
so that kind of like it's an insane form of justice that's really not at all rational.
Mm-hmm.
You start to see, the people who believe and teach these things, they may be able to talk about it rationally for a little bit, but after a while you start like, okay, there's something wrong with this person. Like there's no way
It's like, have you ever seen the movie Frailty?
Frailty? No, I haven't seen it.
I highly recommend it, but the basic concept, without ruining anything, is that there's this father who, along with his sons, believes that he was put on Earth to be basically an angel to kill demons.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that with Bill Paxton.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an insane movie.
It's actually one of my favorite movies of all time, but it's just
really good. Yeah, and at the end of the movie, you never really know if it was
real or not,
or if they were actually really good people, or if they were the bad people. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so it's like it's something like that. Like, if you're being told to do something, but my thing is, it's like if Ahmed is telling him that these people are bad, how do we know that she's right?
How do we know that she's right, or how do we know if she's even real? That's the other thing too.
Or if it's just some kind of, maybe he has dissociative identity disorder or something. But
right, maybe he's using Ahmed, because I've done a little bit of research on Ahmed too. So apparently, she wasn't really even a god herself. She basically was like a servant of another god, and then that god would actually be the one to weigh the scales, and then if your heart was, I think, light, like heavier than a feather or something like that, then Ahmed would eat your heart. But then in this show, it actually shows Ahmed above the scales themselves, so that she's the one actually weighing the scales. So that could be an indication, like, well, did Ahmed herself kill a fellow god or rise to power in her own way, type of thing? And is she trying to become like the head god or the godhead,
Because I mean,
all the gods here sound bad. Like Khonshu is like an asshole completely. So like,
because honestly, I think Khonshu might be the bad guy of the show, but or
one of the bad guys.
And in certain ways, I might even think these gods aren't really gods. They're basically just dissociative identity disorders for these people.
They could be, but where are they getting all the power from? The supernatural power from? That's what I want.
Who knows? Maybe that's just built in, but I don't know. Who knows? You know what I mean? It's hard to say, but we'll find out.
At this point, it's hard to say. But anyway, so yeah, go ahead.
But I was gonna say we can leave that for speculation.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So what happens next then?
So he uses the cane to open a portal into, I guess, hell or something, and then, or the Egyptian underground, afterlife, and lets out another jackal, because apparently, I guess that's all he has the power to bring out is jackals, because that's all we've seen so far. But we do find out, though, that in the security footage, it wasn't that was in Steven's imagination. The jackals really are actually invisible, and only he could see them, apparently. Like, just weird. Because at one point, Layla shows up with the scarab, and then they basically make a run for it. She beats up some guy. They bolt a door open. She still thinks that Steven is Mark, and he's just still like playing his role. And she's like, all right, you need to snap out of it. You need to summon the suit. He's like, what suit? He's like, just do it, And then at one point, she actually calls him Steven just to like kind of level with him.
Yeah.
And still doesn't work. So she's like, okay, well, I'll take care of it, whatever. And then the jackal comes in. She doesn't see it. He does, and it chases him out the window. And Khonshu this time actually tells him to summon the suit right before he falls to his death. It's interesting because Khonshu told Steven to summon the suit, and Steven's not supposed to be involved in any of this at all. But Khonshu's desperate, so he's like, "Fuck, well, I'm gonna lose my avatar. So if this is all I can get, then." And so he's like in a white like tuxedo type suit, not tuxedo, but like he's got the mask and stuff,
like a dress suit, and
and his mask is kind of like fractured a little bit to kind of indicate like his like splintered mind or whatever.
And this is the same costume that in the comics is called Mr. Knight.
Yeah, which was like a detective kind of figure, but I don't think they're going with that in this.
Well, no, but they're using the concept there.
But yeah, they're using the suit, and Mark is like, Steven, like, what are we wearing here? And he's like, well, they told me to summon the suit. He's like, yeah, like the ceremonial garb, like of Khonshu, like not what he's like, not a psychotic Kenny Rod, not
psychotic Colonel Sanders.
Yeah. And he's just like very disappointed in them and stuff. But the Jackal comes back and he beats him up for a while. But interestingly, Steven actually lands a punch against the Jackal on his own, and he's like doing like this, like he's talking himself up like Muhammad Ali, like sting like a bee. I am Steven with the V and stuff like that. He actually punches this Jackal really hard, and he's like, he's surprised at how much like super strength he has, because I guess he has like a little bit of the strength of Moon Knight now, but he's still the personality of Steven. So that's kind of an interesting thing to have now going on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's to let us know, too, that he's the Steven with a V in the Marvel Universe, not the Steven with the PH.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, so basically what ends up happening then, they lose the Scarab in the fight.
Yeah, again.
Yeah. And Spectre eventually takes control. Spectre kills the Jackal, loses the Scarab to Arthur. Khonshu is threatening Mark that he's going to claim Layla as his next avatar should Spectre fail to stop Harrow.
Mm-hmm.
Before sending the... Before he takes Spectre and he sends him to Egypt. So... Yeah.
Like, just, like, floats him by, I guess.
Or and he wakes up in Egypt. So...
He's drinking, or at least someone's drinking on the floor. And,
so who knows who that is, what personality.
Yeah, you see someone in the mirror looking at whoever's drinking on the floor.
Yeah, so we don't know if this is Mark or Steven or maybe a third or fourth personality we don't know about. So
right, in the comics, there is like a guy who kind of is into like partying a little bit.
Yeah.
So that could be, maybe he wanted to have a good time in, Cairo or wherever they're at,
So, what do you think's going to happen? Like, what are you hoping happens? Like,
what I'm hoping is going to happen is that there's going to be sort of like an integration of all of his personalities into like one person. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's kind of what I'm hoping.
Mm-hmm.
Or that Steven's going to become like the main one, and he's gonna have like kind of the sort of strength and determination of Mark, but not like the absolute like brutality of Mark. But who knows? And I think Arthur is going to be revealed as either Ammit doesn't even exist at all, and he's just like taking her power and pretending to be her avatar, or what I'm thinking is because he's lying, when he says that he used to be Khonshu's former avatar and then switched over to Ammit, like converted, I guess, to her religion or whatever. Because like we saw this in like the Crimes of Grindelwald, where Grindelwald just tells Credence that he's Dumbledore's brother. He could just be saying bullshit, just but it could be true, but who knows? And then
yeah.
So I don't know, like about like how could you just leave like being someone's avatar? Like I don't understand how that would even work. Like, so that mean that like,
well, in my opinion, I think if it is true, then I think there was some kind of fight over the fact that he was the avatar between Ammit and Khonshu.
Like, yeah, did Ammit like take him? Like make like, was it like or did she like convince him? That he, like my whole thing is that like maybe Arthur was like too brutal for Khonshu, and then that's what attracted him to Amit in the first place, where he's like, wait a minute, like I get to kill people before the fact, like awesome, and
see that's what leads me to the point that I think that Khonshu might be the ultimate bad guy in the show. So
yeah, like he's not a good guy or a good god. I mean,
no,
in the comic books even worse, actually. Well, at least in the newer, like from 2014 to like 2016, I think. At one point, Moon Knight / Mark is like, he actually plans to kill Khonshu because he's like, I can't take this shit anymore. Like he's a malevolent spirit who's basically like destroyed my entire life. Like, because we find all this retconning shit happen, how he's always had dissociative identity disorder, and that Khonshu, has basically been tormenting him since he was like 7 years old, and basically telling him, like, since he was a kid, like, one day you're gonna be my servant. Like, I mean, like, imagine being that kind of a deity, like, like
it's kind of like helicopter plant parenting or something.
Yeah, but like a much worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's like the ultimate bad guy. I think like they're probably all the gods are bad because they want human avatars to just do their bidding, regardless, of how it affects them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're taking away free will in a way, because like you've got this whole determinism aspect and everything too. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see where they go with all of this, especially now that we're in Egypt. And
it's gonna get real. Man.
Yeah. So yeah, next week episode is directed again by Mohammed Diab. So we'll see how he does that. So he's directing most of the episodes except for 2 of them that are directed by the directors of this episode. So, anyways, anything else before we wrap things up here?
Just be careful, about the gods that you serve, and be careful about joining cults and like accruing supernatural power, via those cults, and like don't be like Khonshu, don't be like Amit. Well, that's the thing, we haven't met Amit yet.
Yeah,
that's the weird thing. So like we know from our perspective, we're seeing Mark and Steven seeing Khonshu. So Arthur probably sees Amit the same way that we see Khonshu. Like she's probably just there, showing up here and there to like give him instructions, and
yeah,
but we don't see her.
Yeah, who knows?
But we'll see. I mean, I'm starting to wonder if they're gonna do some weird twist where like Amit, was like banished, so then she's become like that's like her villain arc almost type of thing. Like like she was actually good before, but then the other gods wanted, to have more power for themselves.
Arthur's manipulating her powers.
That's the other thing too. Maybe she's actually a weak god, and he's learned to like just use her power.
Yeah,
who knows, really?
Yeah, we'll see where they decide to go with this. It'll be interesting, and if you liked our show here, be sure to check out all2real2.com and follow us on all the links there. Everything's there. All of our social media and all that stuff. You can buy stuff on TeePublic, get some t-shirts. If you have any suggestions for anything you'd like us to cover, it's Mike at cullenpark.com. Be good to each other out there. Wear a mask, unless it makes you look like a psychopathic Colonel Sanders. And, wear a condom. Unless that makes you look like a psychopathic Colonel Sanders, too. I don't know how that would work. But anyways, so till next time, folks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to All Too Real 2 podcast, a Cullen Park production. Produced and edited by Michael E. Cullen II. Music by Matthew Haas. Subscribe and share the show. Visit us at cullenpark.com.